Welcome to Healing Beyond the Trauma. My name is Megan Alves. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. And this podcast, I want to break the stigma around mental health and have real, unfiltered conversations about healing. Some stories are going to be raw, even triggering at times, but they're real and they're honest because healing starts with honesty. If you've ever felt overwhelmed, stuck, or like you're carrying it all, you're not. Here, you're going to gain validation, practical tools, and a new perspective to move forward. Because healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about reclaiming your future. So let's dive in. Hey, and welcome back to another amazing episode of Beyond the Break and Beyond the Trauma. My name is Megan Alves. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. And this podcast, we really want to highlight ways of breaking mental health stigma. And today, as I always say, I have a very special guest who is ready to share her story, but she comes with a very unique focus right now of specializing. She's a case manager with the criminal justice courts. And this is Jamie Hatfield. I'm going to let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now in our community and what your area of specialty is right now. Welcome.
Thank you. So my name's Jamie. Right now I am the Assistant Community Engagement Supervisor at Crossroads of Southern Nevada. So I handle all the specialty court clients that come through our program, track them, sit in court, I'll advocate for them when necessary. I also handle the outreach department. So any outreach events that we have going on in the community, we like to, go out and spread the word. We have treatment, there's options. And then I also am a case manager for Shine a Light. I work in the Freedom program, which is case managing, as you were saying, clients that are dealing with specialty courts. So anyone that's in like a drug court program or any specialty court program, the courts send them to us and then we case manage them throughout our program, which is 18 months. So essentially their whole drug court stay, they're a client of mine and I get to walk them step by step through their process, in the beginning, it's all like job, vital documents, those kind of things. But, as they get further along, it's more just like support and how can I be, a friend and a person that they can call on when they're having difficulties in navigating, certain things in their life. I think we all need somebody like that.
Right. Well, and I think, Jamie, like you come into this role is really a passion of yours because you noticed how important it was that after incarceration, and tell us a little bit about your story and how it started, but after your incarcerations, you realized, great, now I'm just let to go with, and at times for you, was zero resources. And so this is a huge passion of trying to bridge that gap for those that are getting out of our incarceration system and then going back, trying to integrate back into society with some resources so that they can actually be successful instead of the transiency of going back in and out of incarceration, right? You're trying to break that cycle.
Yeah, definitely. I was let out of prison twice with nowhere to go, jails numerous times, thrown into a drug court system that I didn't know anything about. And I ran because like the only person that was telling me what was going to happen was the person that was doing an intake on me and they didn't really know. They just asking me my, name, date of birth, social, like, all the things like there was no like this is what's going to happen and this is what we're going to help you do. And so I get to be that person that's like, hey, listen, like not only are we going to, do these things, like you have us as support, because I feel like I didn't have a lot of support when I got out.
Yeah. So take us back a little bit, Jamie. You just said that you were released from prison twice. What landed you there in the first place, that first time? Rewind us a little bit of how this journey, I know, of addiction started, but tell us a little bit about how that started for you.
So like I grew up in Las Vegas, so the partying wasn't, what we did. Like it wasn't anything I wasn't doing anything different than other teenagers my age, right? I was going to the typical party. I didn't know that I had the disease of addiction. I didn't even know what that was. It wasn't, talked about. So I thought I was being a normal teenager and when it came time for me to like actually stop drinking, I couldn't. And it wasn't that I was drinking every day. It was that when I would start drinking, I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
But I didn't every day, so I didn't think I had a problem because, alcoholics drink every day. So, it wasn't
As
Never
we put
thought.
that in air quotes, right? Like that was the
I,
title.
yeah, you know, like I can
Yeah,
stop. I only drink on the weekends. Like, I didn't realize that once I had that first sip and I couldn't stop, that was a symptom of alcoholism.
right.
Relate those two.
No,
Um,
because you were just out partying. I mean, both of us are born and raised in Vegas. And it's almost, I mean, I worked in the club industries, I worked in the nightclubs. Like, we were doing that during work in order to just integrate into, like the party scene. And, for you, it was just, you wouldn't drink every day, which, if you look at the definition of alcoholism, that's the typical sign that we would think, okay, I have a problem because I'm drinking every day. But for you, very different, but still part of alcoholism, because when you would start drinking, it would be a complete binge for,
I would black out, wouldn't come home till, you know what, 11 a.m. But, you know, like I said, that's Vegas for you. Things are open
yeah,
24/7. You know, that's not abnormal. And I also worked in the adult industry, so the occasional cocaine and meth were just things that we all did. And
yeah,
so it didn't seem like a problem because didn't have. I thought I was managing it just fine. I had the house, I had the car. You know, I had all the things that on paper that looked like I had it together, and I was making money, and it wasn't a real issue. So when when I got pregnant and I stopped for the time being, I I was like, okay, this is good. And then I was given a prescription for Lortabs by a
mhm,
doctor for back pain after I had the baby, and that's when my addiction just took hold. So those the prescription pills were my downfall. I realized really quick that I I never wanted to feel any other way than how I felt when I had them, and they became an everyday thing. Um,
yeah. And what
so
year was that, Jamie? Like, that was around when prescription medication was not as rigorous as it is now, correct? Do you
right,
remember like the year around?
it was 2009. So it's
Yeah.
when I had my son, 2010. It was right around then. Yeah, and so I still didn't think it was a problem because it was given to me by a doctor, and well, you know, wasn't that big of a deal. I stopped. They stopped giving it to me, obviously, and I started looking for other ways to get it, which wasn't hard to find. And then I just kept going from there, and eventually, a couple months later, it turned into finding heroin.
Right.
I was getting sick when I didn't have it, and I didn't like that feeling of being sick. And so that progressed into me going to my pill dealer, who was like, I don't have any today, but I have heroin. And I'm like,
Yeah.
it's going to take the sickness away. I want it. You know, like and then as I know now, um, it was all, it was addiction, right? It's the typical story of addiction. Like you start off small, you get addicted, you physically get addicted, and then you just keep progressing. Like, and I see it go back to my drinking days, and I'm like, I've always had the disease of addiction. I've always, once I consume something, I can't stop. I think it was different with the pills because that they gave me a physical sickness. I did them every day long enough to where I was physically dependent on them. And when you do something for that long, you know, it's just the disease takes over, and it's literally fight or flight mode. Uh,
Of
I've heard
how to get that, right? Yeah.
and I've heard that someone say like an addict needing their drug of choice is like they need it, like their brain like honestly thinks it's like breathing to them. Like it's that strong. Like their brain feels like they need it to survive. It convinces you that.
Yeah. And so, just for those of you listening, just to recap, it's as easy as starting in your teenage years. Just, I mean, Vegas is a party scene. We're up 24/7. There's somewhere that you can be and having fun 24/7, which didn't seem out of the norm for you. The blackout nights, definitely red flags for those that, you're starting to check the boxes if by chance those blackout nights, those start to add up. That is a huge sign that there is a problem, because if you're getting to the point of blacking out, you're losing control and rewiring that reward center that says, when I have a drink, I want to get to that place because it feels good. And that's the addiction part of the brain. Of course, it doesn't feel good. You feel like shit the next day. You're not as productive, but that reward center. And then it got to the pills. And what, if you can recall, how many pills were you prescribed and what did it look like as that trajectory changed from managing that back pain to getting that to that addiction? Because I want to highlight the fact that when you're saying physical addiction, that's the unfortunate part of the pain pills is it's so quick for that reward center to say, this feels good, and I no longer can manage this on my own without this substance.
Yeah, and I definitely want to say I do think I was suffering from postpartum as well.
Mm.
Because it was like a month after I had my son, and I didn't know what that was. I wasn't educated on that either.
Yeah.
And so, I had back pain. I went to the doctor. I'm like, hey, my back's not, and so he gives me this prescription. I think he gave me a month's prescription. I want to say it was 90 days. Come back in a month and see me. Um, and I didn't treat the postpartum. I wasn't given anything for the postpartum. I didn't even mention it because I don't think at that time I knew what was going on.
And when
And
you say, not sorry to interrupt, when you say postpartum, you're mentioning postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety. Like, give us an insight of what you were feeling postpartum.
So I was a new mom and it was my first kid and everything was just, coming at me, and I was home by myself with the baby. My kid's father was going to school and working, and it was me alone. And um, I wasn't drinking. I wasn't doing my normal routine, like out being, and so me at home, it was just a whole change. And so, yeah, the anxiety, the depression, a lot of it sunk in and was just, heavy. It was a
Yeah.
heavy load to carry all at once. And so I really feel that I was diagnosed with postpartum depression about 6 months later. But
Mm.
yeah, so I mean, I didn't think at the time when I got on the pain pills though, I had an understanding of that's what it was. So when I started the pain pills, I'm telling you, within 6 months I was on heroin.
Yeah. That
It
is
was
so quick.
because I was taking within a week I was taking double my dose. I ran out before the 30 days was over. And then I was buying Roxy's off the street because they didn't give me another prescription because I was ran out my 30 days too fast. So then I was buying Roxy's, which are a step up on the street. Um, and then I think it was like, yeah, 4 or 5 months hit, and we went to my Roxy dealer and said, hey, I need to go to work because I got a part-time job because I thought getting out of my house would make me feel better because that's part of my depression. Um,
Yeah.
and I couldn't go to work sick. I didn't have the pain pills. And so I called him and I said, I need to buy pills. And he said, I don't have any, but I have, enough heroin to get you well. And I'm like, all right, let's do it.
Right.
Yeah.
And because when you say sick and that physical dependence, that was already pure withdrawal.
hmm
Hmm.
I mean, I think I had that within 2 months.
And I would even venture to say, I just had a small it wasn't a small surgery, but to fix some of the mommy stuff. And I was prescribed hydrocodone. And within 2 days, I was like, I've got to get off of this quick. I couldn't think, I could barely eat. And by day 3, I was shaking, I was nauseous. I was already going through withdrawal symptoms on day 3 because I
Yeah.
barely take Tylenol. So these physical symptoms are can happen really quick, let alone the physical symptoms of withdrawal. That reward center in our brain can very quickly say, let me just get back to that so that I'm not feeling this physical sickness. And that's how quickly it can start. Thankfully, because I know addiction, I was like, get these away from me. I told my husband to take them. But if I was not mentally equipped with that understanding, it's that quick and that easy.
And I've taken pain pills in recovery when I had a surgery, and it was the same. Like, I was on them for 3 days and I was like, I can't, like, I like this too much.
Yes,
You
that's such a good warning sign, right?
And then, it was hard for me to get rid of them.
Hmm.
It was hard for me. It was a fight in my mind, even though I'm sober, even though I know what to do, my addiction still in the back of my head was like, you're throwing away pain pills.
Right. This feels too good to get rid of it. Yeah. Yeah. And good for you for having that awareness. So I hope those that are listening, now that I have this understanding of addiction, and it's taken me a long time. I mean, my mom was addicted to alcohol, but that was an obvious thing in my book. She was up every night drinking a huge bottle of VO. But what you're talking about is that binge drinking, which is part of the alcohol disease, that when you pick up that drink, you can't cut it off until there's this blackout state.
Yeah.
And then here comes, motherhood and all the joys of motherhood. But then we also, many of us are not equipped to understand the depression and the heaviness of such a huge role shift in life that motherhood has. And and then if you're a strong woman and you're like, I've got this on my own, I'll figure this out. I mean, that snowball for you just went so fast.
Yeah, it really did. And I mean, in the beginning, the pills gave me energy. You know, they made me feel good. They took the depression away, and they
Huge.
made me feel like I was being. And I know it's such a, it's so not real, but like, it made me feel like I was being a better mom. Like I
Yeah.
had the energy to get up. I was happy. Like they gave me that euphoric feeling, and that made me want to do things for my kid. And I was like, okay, this
That was it.
is, and that was it. And then fast forward to 6 months later, and I'm buying heroin.
Right. And so really those small steps without the tools, you didn't have the tools. You weren't in the space that you're in now. So you didn't have the tools to realize that this started to become a problem and that going to a dealer to buy heroin, it was just almost like the next step in order for you to continue to function in the best capacity that you can and be the best mother. It's like that is the narrative, how quickly that can happen in addiction. And so, really, as that narrative started, what did that start to cost you?
Oh, everything.
Mm.
Everything. I mean, it was just, I mean, years. So it went downhill really fast when my family found out, obviously, and it was like, we're gonna take the baby, we're gonna do all the things. And I went to rehab, and I still couldn't get, I came home for a little bit, got better, and then, here comes my drinking again because it's legal.
Right.
I can't do heroin, so let me drink. Um, and nobody can say anything or take my kid because I'm doing something legal, and then it just a spiral. I started drinking, my inhibitions started lowering, and it was like, all right, well, we can take a pill or do some heroin one time. It's not going to be the same, and it was just it's circled into everything. I lost my kid. I My kid's dad took me to court, and I couldn't pass a drug test. My family, I lost my family. They were like, we're not having nothing to do with you. I started turning into crime. I was living with, boyfriends and just anyone that I could find that was using because, like I'm in that cycle of insanity and, doing the same thing over and over and not really caring because I had lost my child. Um, the judge told me don't come back till you're a year sober. And in my mind, those words, it was like a death sentence. I
Yeah,
was
a
like,
year is a long time.
I can't go a year. Like
Yeah.
maybe I can go without heroin, but I can't go a year without alcohol. I can't go a year sober. Like, like not completely sober. Like, and so those words kind of just sent me over the cliff. And that's basically I just didn't care anymore. Crime, drugs, was my whole life for a good 6 years.
Mm.
Um, I I gave up the will to do anything but get high. And that's really it.
And so again, here comes, it wasn't like, and we often talk about like these things as being like that stick or the hammer in the coffin, like, hey, you lost your kid, get it together. But that, mental flexibility was not quite there enough to say, hey, I've got to get this together. That year felt like a death sentence to you. Instead of it being a motivator, it was absolutely in the negative sense because you couldn't even fathom the next day and how you were going to manage that with the depression, with the anxiety, with the self medicating, let alone how were you going to grasp that in a year?
Yeah.
And I remember you saying, just as we've talked before, that you now see that that was not an ill intent from the judge, but there was that lack of understanding and the lack of support to actually get you the steps and the resources and the rewiring that was actually needed for you to start the path of that year of sobriety.
Yeah, there was no like, hey, there's treatment centers out there. There was no person on the side. Like nowadays they have people, and I'm not sure about family court, but I mean, like, they should, if they don't, have like a PRSS working there, like, to give you resources, to be there, to be like, hey, like, if you want to try, like, you can. But yeah, at the time it was like, nope, don't come back till you're a year sober. And it shook me.
And so if somebody listening says, okay, what's a PRSS? And if the court, I mean, we know how freaking busy they are, right? If that goes unsaid, if they're, kind of pushed that way, or maybe they're not yet, right? Like maybe somebody listening has a loved one, or maybe themselves listening, we hope. That's the whole point of this conversation, right? Is they're listening and they're like, okay, there's an issue. So, what steps can I take to either avoid, or if the court is too busy and they don't give those resources, where can somebody go to help them with that next step of starting to look at sobriety in a different light?
So PRSS is a peer recovery
Recoveries.
support specialist. So it's someone with lived experience. I'm a certified peer recovery support specialist. Sorry.
That's
So
why we abbreviate.
so everyone on my team is, if you've lived through addiction, it's just someone who's had over 2 years of sobriety, who's lived through addiction, who can help walk people through certain aspects of their life.
Yeah.
Uh, I know we have a lot on staff at Crossroads. They're all on staff at Shine. We feel like, someone with lived experience can definitely help someone who's struggling. Um, and it's just. And what was your second part of your question?
Yeah. And so you're saying like those peer specialists, they've had lived experience, but then there's also been training in place so that those that are trying to understand those next steps, not only will you have somebody that you get connected through, Crossroads has them, Shine the Light, Las Vegas has them, you know, um, individuals that are trained and passionate about those support and getting those resources. And then outside of that, when you think about kind of taking those steps, they would just contact and say, hey, like
Yeah.
give us some insight on when they get brave enough to get that resource, what could that look like for them?
So I mean, just like if someone calls us here at Shine, it's okay. Like, I mean, do you need detox? Do you need housing? Do you need treatment? What are we looking at? We assess them, for what they need. And
Yeah.
then we're like one big referral source here at Shine, we like to say. We just place people where they fit, so what's your insurance? What are you detoxing from? What are you on? Do you need housing? All those things. And then we go in our research source book and we're like, okay, we call our community partner. Do you have a bed for this person? And then we get them in. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like within an hour, if you call the outreach number, you're in a place. You're somewhere safe, where you can get the help that you need.
So, seriously, at this point, with the steps in place, there are people willing to help within an hour. You take that brave step. And I mean, Rob said it in my podcast too. He's like, somebody said, hey, this is the path you need to go down. He didn't know what that path looked like. He just had to have faith that these people that were there to help knew the steps to take to get him help. And he just surrendered. Like, I'm going to just surrender and take those steps. And here's that brave step within an hour can get you those resources. And then the steps of like your own will of consistently making the decision to stay sober, to get really honest, right? Like tell us a little bit going back to your story. You had two incarcerations, you had 6 years of your life that was just in the trenches of addiction and crime in order to get to your next fix, right?
Yeah.
And how did that look when you finally said enough, or what happened?
So my last prison stint was in 2020, so it was during COVID. Um, the first time I got out of prison, I didn't have anywhere to go, and I was released, to the streets. I was actually riding a guy in jail that was putting money on my books, and I paroled to his house, and it was not a good situation. And I took off and I went, hi, because I wasn't gonna, like it was scary. And so there's no resources given for you when you're in prison. Right. There are none for you to parole. Once they're kicking you out, they're kicking you out. And it's like you basically are sink or swim. So in 2020, when I got released from prison this last time, I was supposed to expire, meaning I was supposed to do my whole time because I was a known runner. COVID was happening. They they called me into the medical office one day, and I was only a couple weeks into my sentence, and they took my blood, and I said, what are you taking my blood for? I already did that. And they said, well, you're being released tomorrow. And I said, what? No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm supposed to do 8 more months. I don't know what you're talking about. And they said, no, because of COVID and the courtroom regulations and the 6 feet and all that thing, I couldn't see the judge. So since I couldn't see the judge, they have a law in place that if you can't see the judge within a certain amount of time, they have to release you. So they were releasing me back on parole, and they had nowhere to put me, and I had to figure it out. So I called my mom and I begged her to let me come home. Mind you, I hadn't talked to my mom in 3 years, and she said no. And I called her the next morning to say goodbye because I knew that if I was going back out there, it was going to be the last time. And my sister, who is also in recovery, lives in California, and I don't know what made her take this chance on me, but she said, your sister's going to let you come live with her. I'm going to pick you up from PMP, parole and probation, and I'm going to drive you to California. And I was like, I mean, it was a God shot. It was huge, right? It was huge in that moment because my family hadn't talked to me in 3 years. I had robbed them. I had stolen from them. I had, lost their grandchild. I was not on good terms with them. And for them to open that door was, like the biggest miracle that could have possibly happened. And so I didn't take that lightly. I think I was tired. I was tired of doing it. I knew that if I went back out there, I wasn't coming back. And I was like, if I can at least try, what's the worst that can happen? Like, let me just try. And I really hadn't tried up until that point. I don't think I was ready. I don't
Yeah.
know what made me get ready, but I just think I was just tired. And, yeah, my mindset from that day forward was like, we're going to do this,
Yeah.
we're going to do this. Like, your family's taking a chance on you. God's opening doors that are not literally prison doors that are not supposed to be open in this moment. Like, you need to do something.
Well, and that's what was wild, right? When you said, okay, well, hold on, you're releasing, like, why are you taking my blood? You're releasing me tomorrow. Hold on, wait, no. You have something wrong because I'm supposed to be in prison for 8 more months. Like, you can't release me tomorrow because I don't know where to go. I know my family's not going to open up the door, and you're going to get released with zero resources and just go back to the comfort habits, although they were shit and just kept that revolving door, but it was the best that you had at the time. And so, and not always do people have that luxury of going back to family because those bridges have been burned too many times. And of course, families have to safely close their doors for their safety. You robbed, I mean, and
I don't blame, and I wouldn't blame my family if they didn't.
right.
My mom said she heard my voice and she knew that she wouldn't see me again.
Yeah.
Like, she knew, like, that was it. Like, I was just so far broken down that, like, and I don't, and, even my parole officer, when I went to see him the next day, was like, there wasn't even a homeless shelter open because of COVID. There
Right.
wasn't, he was like, well, I don't know where you're going to go. Like, this is what, I mean, our criminal justice system is doing. Well,
We don't have anything for you, right? The resources in and of itself are so limited. COVID was a shit storm. And even more of our resources. I mean, I remember working in the psychiatric hospital at that time, and we would go to discharge, and it was so challenging. And even at that time, I was fully licensed. And I mean, I felt like I had at least 6 years under my belt of case management and resources and building connections in the community so that when I knew that somebody was discharging, I at least had somewhere for them to go. And that was really my biggest role in that hospital, I felt like, because I knew that if those resources weren't in place, they're just going to come back, or God forbid, worse. And when the majority of those resources had to close down because of those restrictions, or they were so overran because although Las Vegas is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week environment, we don't have 24/7 resources. Thankfully, organizations now, like some of the organizations that you've mentioned so far, are really taking, I mean, like I told Rob and like, I don't know how you guys find the time to sleep in your day because you guys are doing so much for the community and there's so much need, and the resources still are limited, but not as limited as theirs. So let's say, for instance, somebody doesn't have family because those doors got closed. now they can reach out to Crossroads. Now they can reach out to Shine the Light, and find those steps. And
Yeah, and if we don't have like if we can't house them directly, we find places that can or will. It's it's hard because if you're coming out of prison, like you're not directly dealing with substance abuse issues anymore, even though you still have the addiction. But if they're willing to go to treatment, we always have a spot for them somewhere. We work with so many people across the valley that we have more than enough beds. So
and you
we
said,
also we work with the jails too, which is really cool because what I think is really cool is because jails release at 1, 2, 3 in the morning, right?
yeah,
Because when your sentence comes up on that day, say you get released on 5/13, they can't hold you that day because your release date is 5/13. So they have to kick you out at 1 a.m., right? So you're getting out at 1 a.m. down on Fremont Street in Las Vegas and expected to get better.
right. And I mean, if you have not been down to Fremont Street in Las Vegas, it's our downtown. I mean, they've tried to do some revamping, but unfortunately, I mean, it is easy drug central, easy crime central to get released down there.
So we built relationships with the jail that if we have a participant that's or a client that's willing to come to our program after, they'll hold them till 9 in the morning till we open the next morning. We just let them know. They get the okay from the person, obviously, but we just let them know, hey, like we can't pick them up at 1, but we'll be there at 9. So it's a warm handoff, right? So they're not getting out and walking around Fremont Street for 8 hours before they come to a program. So
And you said something really important just now, and you said it a couple times, and I want to highlight it, is when the person is willing.
right.
And so, I mean, you had that moment that you were willing to get that treatment. If somebody has checked those boxes, as we've had this conversation of, oh shit, there's a lot of these red flags. I've checked a lot of these addiction boxes. It's starting to take control and ruin parts of my life. What does that willingness look like? And if you were to talk to yourself with all the tools that you have now, back then, what would you tell her, or what would you tell someone? You role play this however you want, and that willingness piece.
Like you have to be willing to do whatever it takes. You have to be willing to do whatever it takes. It's literally and it sucks sometimes, and there's things aren't always gonna go the way you want them to or you expect them to. I'm a huge control freak. Like I need things to go exactly how I want them to go. And so you have to be willing to just understand and go with the flow and take advice. And like Rob, he's my mentor, he's my boss, he's one of my best friends, and like I don't like all the things he says to me, but I do them. I don't like what he tells me to do all the time, but I do it because I trust him and I see he has like the things that I look up to and want, and desire to be. So just yeah. And it's hard because I wasn't willing for so long, and I don't know if I could go back and talk to the person I was in 2017, or because I wasn't willing, and I don't know if I wanted it. There were times where I was okay with the life I was living, and I think I'd been just so conditioned and adapted to the life I was living that like I couldn't see that there was anything on the other side, and I didn't even know if I really wanted what was on the other side. I didn't. If I could show her everything that I've done up until this point, maybe. But then again, like who knows? Like I was
Right.
so far gone. I was so far gone that I thought I was living my best life.
Right.
I was, I was, I really, really thought like I didn't want responsibility. I didn't want any of that stuff. But and that comes over years of doing it over and over that you just become conditioned to it and you adapt to it. Um, if I could have told her on that day that, the judge said like if you don't get a year sober, that like you can do it. If I could have gotten to her when she was
Mhm.
just fresh, I think then it might have changed something. But I mean, when you get too deep in, it's just like you literally have to hit rock bottom. You have to
Yeah.
find out yourself. And I tell people that all the time, like, like if you're not done, you're not done. I love you, and I'll be here when you're done. But like, well, let's not keep doing this like over and over. Like, I mean, you know, you need go get done, and then
Well, and I
call me.
think that that's an important thing to hear for those that loves somebody in the cycle of addiction, you know, and I think that that's another person that we need to talk to in this episode, right? Is what would you tell those that love somebody in addiction and they're not willing and ready? How do we protect and support them?
I mean, I think you just love them until till they're ready. And unfortunately, there's nothing you can do to make them ready. Nothing. I don't believe in what is that tough love where you cut them off completely. I mean, my mom did it to me, but it caused a lot of trauma. I understand the boundaries and like putting boundaries up and like not letting them in your home and like not giving them money and all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah,
I
yeah,
like some communication, just to know I was loved, just to know like, hey, I still love you. Like a phone call isn't gonna, hurt. So I would say love them. I always answer my people that are struggling phone calls. Like, I mean, like I love them from a distance. I have my boundaries. They're not allowed in my life. They're not allowed in, like, but but
yeah.
I'm still here. I'm still here when they are willing and ready to take that step. I will be there to help them take it. It's just until then, I got to keep them at arm's distance.
And so, how do you protect yourself when those that you love are in that addiction cycle? And you're saying boundaries, right? We talk about boundaries a lot for mental health, for our physical health, right? Financially. And when you're loving somebody in addiction, and that cycle is so strong. And I mean, those that have loved somebody in addiction, it's the fairy tale, right? They go in this cycle quite a bit, and you think that they're getting better, and then it's like this sweet talk, and then it's right back to the cycle. And so the person that loves them is burned over and over again. And when you say boundaries and when you say, I allow that call, because that call has to be like, it is really difficult, right? You love somebody and those calls come in and they're like, I need this or this and this. And you're like, I hear you. So, how do you continue to set those boundaries? And how do you emotionally make sure that when you keep them at arm's length, that you're not carrying that weight all day long?
Like I have someone in my a family member right now that's dealing with that. And let me tell you, when he drinks, he's mean and he
Mhm.
makes threats. He does, and he calls you names, and your phone doesn't stop ringing, and he's blocked. He's blocked, but he finds ways. He finds ways. He'll
Yeah.
have people call me, but I only answer it when he's ready to go to detox, and I'll take it, I won't take him personally, but I will send someone on my team to go pick him up and take him every single time. Um, like, so the boundary is like, I can't deal with him when he's drunk, but as soon as he's ready, I'll take him to detox. And as soon as he goes to detox, I'll unblock his call and we'll talk and and he knows how to get to me and he knows how to get to, a lot of the people on my team. And so, yeah, it's when you're ready, like that's my boundary. And when he's not as drunk, I'll talk to him, like if he, but like when he gets like mean like that, he's blocked. And then, I'm blocked a couple days later. But
So
I
it's
know
your emotional boundary for you to keep yourself safe. Yeah.
I know it's not him. I know
Right.
it's not him at all, and I know that he's sick, and I know he's hurt, and I see that anger. And I don't take anything personally, right? Like the anger is because he's hurt and he's mad at himself and he has a lot of issues going on. It has nothing to do with me. And you have to learn that with addiction. Like if any of your family members are struggling, it has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with you. They get mad at you because you won't give them $20. It has nothing to do with you. Like every single piece of it has nothing to do with you, but you have to be there when they're ready. You have to. Like, um, I mean, I wouldn't be here if my mom really wasn't there for me. I mean, she cut me out for 3 years, but when I finally was ready, she was there. And like, you have to. Like, it's just like I don't
Yeah.
know. For me, I have to. I mean, I can't imagine not picking up the phone for someone, and if they're asking for help, and then you know something happened to them. Like, I don't want that on my conscience at all. Like,
Right.
I'd rather live with the cussing me out and all that stuff, knowing that it's not my loved one. It's not my loved one. It's their disease.
Yeah.
Um, so I'd rather live with that than the other.
Yeah. And I would venture to say that you do a lot, like, or have done, a lot of work in order to be strong in those boundaries and not ingest all of that. And
Yeah.
so for those that, we have the steps for those in the addiction when you're ready, but for those that are trying to love somebody in addiction, what type of support would that look like for them?
I mean, it's really up to them. It's really up to them what they can handle. Like I said, like I think, like I think it's a case by case basis. Like it depends on how your loved one acts, what it's like for when you're dealing with them. But like I said, a phone call, like just to know that, like even if it's to say I love you and hang up, like I love you, I'm here for you when you're ready and hang up. Like I think it's really important for us in active addiction to know people still care about us. Um, we know we're not, the best people, and we know we're not, like, we know what we're doing is wrong. But like just to know, but like a lot of the times we feel like nobody cares. Like they
Yeah.
pushed us to the side, and that makes it harder to ask for help when we are ready.
Right.
Because like if nobody cares, then why are, like, well, I'm not calling them. They're not gonna help me. Like,
Um, yeah, and I would venture to say, you know, getting a group. I know I haven't done the research in a minute, and or have I found the connection? So you tell me. But I know that there used to be some good groups for Al-Anon. Do they still have some of those groups around, or do you?
yeah, I've heard of them, but I don't know where they're at.
Okay. And I know you can Google search that. And I know that there is some, you know, locally still happening. Some are online, some are in person. And Al Anon was based off the AA model, but it is for those supporting those in addiction so that you're not alone because typically addiction cycles look very similar. And the pain that you're experiencing, you're not alone in that pain because in that moment, you are suffering, right? Those that love those in addiction are suffering. You're trying to set those boundaries. You love the person. That's not an easy weight to carry and just go on with your day to day or be able to pick up the phone. I love you. I've got to go. Like that can be really, really heavy. And so I would venture to say a really good step is to not feel like you have to do it alone. I've known a lot of family members that have been just so deeply embarrassed by the steps that their loved one has taken because of that addiction disease that they just keep it all to themselves. It's not something to try to do yourself. And there is, I mean, a ton of support out there. If you're not ready for therapy, if you're not ready for support groups, doing a little bit of a search about how to set healthy boundaries, how to be able to manage your emotion regulation. I mean, that's just, I mean, not to plug, but to plug Mental Summit. I mean, that's literally the purpose that I designed an online platform for emotion regulation. One of those being that when stress is hitting, you have to be able to manage those emotions in order to manage anything else in your life. But if you're so wrapped up and alone in that cycle, it can be so detrimental. And those patterns of, you know, dysregulation or resentment or anger or just all of the things that tend to create in such a stressful environment just continues to perpetuate, right? Which is, I venture to say, have you talked to your mom after when she decided to set that 3 year boundary? I mean, how did that go for her? Do you know?
I, you know, she said she had to do it for herself. I respect it. I still don't understand it, and just personally, like I just don't. Like I still hold on to a little bit of resentment. Like we couldn't say I love you, like. But I mean,
Yeah.
and again, like she had to do what she had to do. She was told by people that that's how she had to go about it. So,
Yeah.
there's been a lot of like I think it's like, there's different ways. Like there's different ways. It's whatever you got to do for yourself. But I wish she wouldn't have done it that way.
Yeah. Well, and I would venture to say, as you and I just celebrated Mother's Day yesterday, and you know, now you're in such a better space, and I know that your kiddo is your world, and you've done everything to get back on track. I would venture to say that that was not an easy time for your mom, and it's not easy for those that have to set those boundaries. You mentioned a minute ago that you stole from her, you lied times. I mean, that is so challenging. And
Yeah.
the best advice she was getting
Yeah.
was you've got to close it off to protect yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hard. and
Yeah.
and and I appreciate you sharing this story because I think that this is the part of addiction that we don't often talk about is how these cycles tend to ebb and flow and then how you've gotten out of them. Like you mentioned a minute ago, is that every story has its different parts to it and every story can be very different because addictions look very different, right?
Hmm.
You weren't drinking every day when you first started, it was just binge drinking. It was just right. And that was just part of the party scene. And then it perpetuated to this. All of these patterns, they do have clinical traits to them for, I'm sure now that you see, but when you're in the thick of it, it's hard to see those things. And when you're trying to help somebody, there is better ways of managing it, but none of those ways are easy because you are just trying to do the best that you can as you are trying to do, right? Managing an addiction. And there's better ways than others, but working on that. And so as you've gotten out, as you've gone through your healing journey, tell us a little bit about how you stay on this path today and what you've gained.
Everything.
You lost everything and you gained everything back when you got sober.
Everything back. Yeah, gained everything and more back. My life's beautiful today. I did end up going back on my year sober and filing those papers on my exact year sober and filing those papers. And
Yes.
I have my son back in my life. I have my family back in my life. I have, two amazing jobs that I love doing that don't feel like work because I'm just giving back to the community that, poured into me when I couldn't. So, and then, I have a support system. I mean, I think it's really, really super, super important, even with like the Al-Anon and like parents struggling, like a support system of people who know what you're going through, even when I, talk to, you know, other people, they just don't, I feel like just don't understand, like you don't understand the desperation I was going through. Why would they do that? Until you walked a mile in my shoes, please don't ask me why I did something because I sometimes I don't even know, but I know that like the people that I have in my corner have all been through the same exact things that I have been through. And we're cheerleaders for each other. We just want the best for each other. There's no negativity. There's no talking behind each other's backs. There's like, I mean, I just have the best support team I could, ask for. And I found that in the rooms of AA. I don't go to meetings all the time anymore, but I used to. I went to 3 meetings a day my first year. I jumped right in and I found the support system who would just love me and for all my past and even being a heroin addict who lost my kid, who was in prison, felon, all the things, like they still loved me and I didn't have to, explain myself to them, like why I did something. And yeah, so I really, really think it's important for people in recovery to find those people that are them.
Yeah, and
I
you
mean,
got to get in those rooms. You've got to try it out. One room might not be yours. And so don't give up on, the first time you go to AA and it's not your room. You just haven't found it. But there's a ton of rooms, right?
yeah,
Like there's even things outside of AA, right? Like the church organizations have, I think at most of the big churches here in Vegas, there's some type of, you know, um, it's not AA, but some type of recovery connection group. And so find your room and make it yours. Find your people. It doesn't have to be everybody else's, path. Just choose one and make it yours. Find your people.
yeah, there's NA, CA, all the A's, GA. I mean, and then yeah, churches. There's the Phoenix Recovery Group. That's just like, I mean, they're everywhere. You just have to find them. I would literally leave a meeting and ask random people in the parking lot, "Hey, where are we going to dinner after?" Like, just like because
Yes. Yeah, your sober community, right?
I didn't want to be alone, and I wanted, and so I would literally follow these people to dinner. They had no idea who I was, and I'm just. I just wanted to be a part of, and I am now, and it's a beautiful feeling. I'm blessed.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your story today. We just like dropped the bomb on so many resources out there, and I'll make sure, I know we were kind of fast on those, but so many of those organizations that you just mentioned, I'll make sure check the podcast notes. I will make sure to link them in our podcast notes. I'll also put where to find Jamie, Shine the Light, and all of the things that we've talked about today, support groups. I'll make sure that they're in there. And girl, keep killing it because it's so exciting. I'm obviously a huge advocate for treatment and just taking those steps of finding community. And before we end this session, I just want to say that this is just another telltale importance when it comes to recovery or overcoming trauma or addiction is finding that purpose. Now, every day you have something that you're living life with purpose. And when you're missing that, it's so important to get curious and find your people to help you find that purpose. It was good to see you today. Thanks,
Thank
Jamie.
you.
Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you gained what you needed to hear today.
Healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about the strength of moving forward. If today's episode resonated with you, take a moment to share it with someone you love, because when we share with love, we help to break the stigma together. If you want to connect with me and learn more about what we're doing over at Mental Summit to break these stigmas, please connect with me over at mymentalsummit.com. Keep showing up, keep growing, keep going together, and remember, you're not alone in this.